Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 17, Episode 10. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, have Steelers kickoff 48 hours away for their preseason game number 2 against the New York Jets. Been a little bit quiet with the team transitioning from SBC back to their home base. They'll have practice today, so we'll hear from Mike McCarthy and select players. So, Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Wednesday. I do look forward to listening to and hearing what Mike McCarthy has to say and doesn't say, perhaps, maybe more importantly, during his Wednesday morning press conference. And as you stated, they're back at on the South Side. Training camp's officially done for when it comes to 2026. Man, really, once again, looking forward to the second preseason game on Friday night against the Jets. And more notably, when it comes to the quarterback play of the two young quarterbacks, to see if those guys can build on what they did in the preseason opener. A lot to look forward to, obviously, with a lot of other players. We'll see who's in and who's out. I don't know if we'll get that much information out of McCarthy when it comes to that on Wednesday morning, but anything that he does say that's notable, we'll make sure to pass along on the site, and obviously discuss more in depth on Friday as we get into kind of breaking down more of the things that we're looking forward to seeing in this second preseason game. And fortunately enough, the timing worked out perfectly that this morning the new contract details on the extension for Keeanu Benton were made public. So that'll give us something to talk about and probably at the top of the show as well. So happy Wednesday to everybody.
All right, Dave, let's not tease it any longer. We talked a lot about the Benton deal previously, but we knew we didn't have the structure and the year-by-year contract details that really would shape how I think people should feel about this contract. I think the feeling is pretty clear now that we have all the nitty-gritty, so take it away. What are the details?
Yeah, the devil's always in the details, right? That's why it's hard when these things hit Twitter and, you get the new money average and even sometimes the initial what's listed as guarantees. It's always important to wait until you see the full layout of the deal to come out before you really start getting deep into whether or not, it was a good deal or not, which side it favors, and yada. But we talked the other day about Keeanu Benton and potential what the signing bonus might look like, what his first year 2026 total money might look like, and what the money would look like through 2027. I think we came away from that discussion saying don't be surprised if maybe his first year money came in around $16 million, and perhaps his perhaps his 2-year money cash flow through 2027 might end up being somewhere around 31 million. Well, it's even lower than that. Keeanu Benton's signing bonus as part of this extension was, and I use the word just because I think I think the word just is appropriate to use here. Some people say, what are you talking about? Just 12.855 million signing bonus. But when you think about, originally I thought maybe we might see that number somewhere around 18 million, and then backed off of that in our show the other day saying, I don't know, maybe that signing bonus comes in around 15 million, more realistic. But the actual signing bonus was 12.855 million. His base salary actually decreased a little bit as part of this deal, and in total, Keeanu Benton is now scheduled to earn 14 million in cash, fully guaranteed in 2026. So that is a lot lower than even us kind of reconciling it on the Monday podcast here, thinking what it might be. Now, his salary cap charge jumped almost $2 million, but not 2 million, 1.966028. So a hair over $1.966 million is what his salary cap jumped. His total cash through 2027. And remember that we thought, as we looked at it, that maybe that number would come in around 31 million the other day when we spoke. Well, it's just 26 million. Essentially, the way you need to look at now, he does indeed, much like we talked about with Nick Herbig and the structure of his deal, with there being three or roster bonuses in years 2028, 2029, and 2030. That was indeed the case. And just like Nick Herbig as well, too, there are workout bonuses beginning in 2027 through 2030 of 300,000 each there. But essentially, the way everybody needs to look at this deal, I think, and we don't know what the injury guarantees are in 2027 next season, but it's a good bet that either some of that money is more than likely injury guaranteed. Don't know yet how much of the $11.7 million base salary is injury guaranteed, but it won't be surprising if either all of that 11.7 or partial amount of it ends up being guaranteed for injury only. But the fully guaranteed money is 14 million. He's scheduled to earn a total of 26 million over the course of 2026 and 2027 combined. And you need to look at this deal right now as a 2-year, $26 million deal with essentially 3 option years. The first real kind of out trigger for this deal, you would imagine, would be in March of 2028, when he's due a $4 million roster bonus. If they were to cut him uh, prior to paying, after the 2027 season, but prior to the March 2028 roster bonus being due, he wouldn't even have, it'd be almost, I think it's somewhere along the lines of $7.713 million in dead money at that point. So that's the way this thing needs to be looked at. A 2-year, $26 million deal. The interesting thing, too, I think when you look at globally here, the big topic is that his new money average is $18 million. That indeed is true. And Cam Heyward now officially, technically, has a new money average of $18 million as well, too. But once again, Benton is scheduled to earn $26 million through 2027 now, whereas Cam Heyward, as part of his contract extension redo, if you will, earlier in the offseason, is scheduled to earn $32.25 million through 2027. So that's a difference of $6.25 million between those two players in cash earnings over the course of the next 2 seasons, even though both of them technically have a new money average of $18 million. So this is really backloaded when it comes to Keeanu Benton. It's very much a prove it over the course of the next 2 years type of deal. Heck, they could technically, if they wanted to, get out of this deal relatively cheap after just the 2026 season if he just completely falls off the cliff. Obviously, we don't hope that doesn't happen, but it's that low of a signing bonus that would allow for such a thing to happen there. So, I wrote several months ago that I thought it would probably be in Benton's best interest to bet on himself in 2026, because of the sheer fact that if he did have a great season, he could probably cash in as one of the, if not the most eligible unrestricted free agent defensive tackles in 2027. I guess I understand why he took this deal, but he would have he stood to, I think he would have stood to make a lot more money, obviously, had he bet on himself for 2026. And that's why I mostly lent myself to thinking that this deal wasn't going to get done because in my head, I couldn't imagine him signing a deal such as this. Now, obviously, look, the Steelers do have risk in this because once again, they are paying him $14 million guaranteed for 2026. You figure that at a minimum they're going to be paying him $26 million over the course of the next 2 years. But this deal really is slanted in favor of the Steelers when it comes to cash flow. And when you figure that Keeanu Benton was already on the books to earn, hair over 1.7 million in 2026 prior to this deal. I mean, the new money it took, the new cash flow to give him, as part of the $14 million to get him locked up for 4 additional years, it took just $12.25 million in some change to get that done. So this is essentially a $12.25 million bet for the Steelers that Benton can become a better player. And if you're a fan of the Steelers, and maybe if you thought prior to this show in particular that you didn't agree with the decision for this team to extend Keeanu Benton, I don't know how you can look at this deal right now and say, it's not a decent bet on the Steelers' part.
It's a cheap bet as far as bets go for contracts for a 25-year-old defensive lineman. So just to summarize, even though I think you made the point, but just to kind of give the one-sentence statement for the layman out there, this is a very team-friendly deal in Pittsburgh's favor, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, you look at his, technically his new money average is 18 million, where his actual total cash flow average over the course of the next 2 seasons is 13 million. So that's a $5 million difference right there. And when you look at full guarantees, 14 million, once again, we don't know what the injury guarantee amount is in 2027. But yeah, this is basically a 2-year bet with him at $13 million. I mean, if he has another season, I guess, like he had last season, and he gets a little bit better as a run defender, and I don't know, maybe he gets 6, 7 sacks in 2026. This really becomes a great deal for the Steelers. And if only you get the next 2 seasons out of him based on, let's say, identical copies of what he did in 2025, I still think it's a good deal because you're talking 11 sacks over the course of the next two seasons, and to pay a guy on average $13 million to do that, and it also kind of lowers the need to get him in there to play 700, 800, 900 snaps, I guess, per se. But this is a very team-friendly deal overall. And once again, I think you look at, he's scheduled to earn $26 million over the course of the next 2 years, and the total value of the deal is $73,700,000, almost $73,750,000. There is, more than half of that is due in the final 3 years of the deal. So you'll be able to make your decision by March of 2028 of whether or not you want to move forward with this deal. And obviously, if he's, deserving of playing in the 2028 season and not getting cut, you're going to look back at this deal and say, oh, wow, they got a real good jump on this, and they got him at a real good market price.
I still think there's urgency and some pressure and heat on Pittsburgh to get him snaps and justify what is still a commitment where money could have been put elsewhere, theoretically, but it's certainly blunted by the less gaudy nature of this contract, the way that we dig into the details of the deal. So I think still having a good plan for Benton to maximize his talent and get him to reach his potential is going to be really important, and the contract doesn't wave all that away, but I understand your point. So from Benton's point of view, why did he accept this deal? Because as you said, dude will be 25 come next free agency, doesn't turn 26 until next July. If he has a 7, 8 sack season, his goal this year, he said, is 8 to 10. Let's say he gets 9, man, he would have gotten paid so much money out there in free agency for a 25-year-old defensive tackle in his prime coming off a big year. He would have gotten 20 million plus per year and a lot less padding and like legit money in that contract. Look at what Milton Williams got a year ago. So why did Benton take this deal?
Yeah, I think it's for the security now more than anything. Let's say that Keeanu Benton had a better year in 2026 than 2025, but not off the charts. Let's just say that there's improvement there. Let's give him 6 sacks maybe. He plays against the run a little bit better. Currently, right now, and let's say he would have been a free agent going into next offseason, and there is a tax obviously involved with free agents because those guys can sign anywhere at that point. So let's say he could have hit a new money average of, let's say, 28 million. All right, which is would compared to where the market sits right now, would rank him 5th, tied with Dexter Lawrence as things sit right now as far as interior defensive linemen go. So 28 million. Now he would obviously, a new money average, you would think that of 28 million there, he'd probably get $28 million fully guaranteed in signing bonus and base salary in 2027, at least equaling that. So let's say that was his take, that he had a chance to earn 28 million flat out in 2027. Well, as we mentioned, he's getting 26 million over the course of this year and next year in total. So, did he leave 2 million on the table potentially? Or, if he had a fantastic season, maybe he's up in that well over $30 million new money average. Now he is, he would have to stay healthy, obviously, and he'd have to go about his business earning the $1.7 million and some change this year for the IFCOM. So he was a bit over the barrel. And plus, if he had a triple fantastic season in 2026 and still hadn't signed, an extension with the Steelers this offseason, he obviously could have been subject to the franchise tag on top of it there. Not a bad problem to have, but he was a little bit over the barrel as a progressing player still. And the idea of having to wait and stay healthy in 2026 before getting to free agency and getting a payday of, let's say, a new money average of between 28 million and, even if he top of the market, 38 million. So I think that's why he opted to kind of take that deal now. And plus, his good buddy Nick Herbig's in Pittsburgh. He obviously wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. I think the Steelers had him a bit over the barrel here.
It's interesting. He did say after signing the contract, when he spoke to reporters, he said the deal was going to get done. It was just a question of when. I don't know if that was just sort of confidence of it all, or if his heart was just set on staying in Pittsburgh and staying teammates with Nick Herbig and just liking the new coaching staff. I'm not sure if he just felt like maybe I'll take a little bit less and not worry about betting on myself and squeezing out every dollar next year and just have a good thing going in Pittsburgh now. And I just want to stay where I'm at. Hard to know exactly what's in his head, but you're right. There certainly would have been a level of risk if he goes out there and gets hurt or doesn't have a good year or just isn't a fit in the system and his value declines. He wouldn't have gotten the contract that he just picked up. So there's always that balance between betting on yourself versus taking what is available to you right now. A lot of players will bet on themselves, but I understand Benton's mindset. So, and listen, that's still a life-changing sum of money that he'll receive ultimately. And that's great for him, for a guy that was an unheralded recruit coming out of college. And I'm sure he can support himself and his family for a long, long time if that money is used and invested wisely. So it's a good deal for Pittsburgh. And I think that's the main takeaway from our standpoint for those with the hand wringing over the 18 million average yearly value. That's why those are broad-based numbers to get reported out, because they're often most favorable to the agent and the player. The structure is always the most critical. It's why we wait and want to offer that commentary. And now with all the hay in the barn, it looks like a really good deal for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and that's why I'm guessing that we didn't hear anything more than the first report of just $72 million new money over 4 years and the $18 million new money average, because other than lying and saying that he got the first 2 years guaranteed, which technically, I guess you could say if you include the injury guarantees, but the only fully guaranteed money, once again, is the 14 million in this. Once again, you need to look at this as a 2-year, $26 million contract with 3 option years. And if he's not playing up to snuff after the 2027 season, he's going to be out of Pittsburgh, and he's going to be out of Pittsburgh before he's paid that $4 million March roster bonus in 2028. If we're having conversations of, man, the Steelers will easily pay that $4 million roster bonus in March of 2028, then it means he's more than lived up to the $26 million that he earned in the first 2026 and 2027 combined. So, yeah, this is heavily slanted towards the Steelers' favor here, although there is, risk involved in it to some degree. But once again, it took them hair over $12 million in additional cash for this year to, get 4 additional years of him locked up. And, 3 years from now, we'd be thinking, man, what a decision that was.
Now, maybe Benton's other calculation was, theoretically, if he plays out his contract and plays the level that Pittsburgh hopes that he can and what I think he's capable of, he could look for an extension ahead of the 2030 season, and he'll still be in his 20s by then. I think he'll be 28, 29 years old, have another bite at that apple. So maybe that's a thought of, let's just do the contract now. Let's not wait another year, and then I can do another contract 4 years from now and be in my 20s and still get really good money then. That's maybe a thought as well.
And look, that'd be a good problem for the Steelers to have too, going into his final contract year of 2030 and saying, we got to extend this guy,
Of course.
that would be a great discussion to have.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No one, not that, obviously I trust your insight completely, but it's like Jason Fitzgerald's analysts kind of weighed on the details of the deal, or it's so brand new that probably no one's had time to really write about it elsewhere.
What? Say again?
Has like Jason Fitzgerald or Over the Cap, because usually they'll break down the contract details. Have they echoed your thoughts, or is it too new for anyone else to really write about their thoughts on the details of the deal?
I haven't seen him write anything about it, really.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Obviously,
it just hit just this morning. So
okay, just for anyone thinking we're putting on black.
You got to remember,
glasses.
when I climb out of bed, I head right
first
for
thing you check.
I head right for the NFLPA sheet to see if anything has changed with any of the totals. So, I mean, it's like Christmas morning when I'm waiting on a contract every morning to get out of bed. I fly downstairs or up or over, not downstairs. Well, I go downstairs first because I got to get the coffee on first. But then I fly back upstairs to see if the NFLPA sheet has changed there, and obviously it did. And once again, they didn't even use $2 million in it was 1.966028 in salary cap space of 2026 to get this deal done.
I'm sure you'll write about it. Pittsburgh current cap situation for 2026. Obviously, you said the slight uptick in cap charge this year. So where does Pittsburgh sit for the here and now?
Let's see. In the here and now, right now, they are 2.986 million and some change under the cap in real time as a result of the Keeanu Benton deal. There is still outlying a injury settlement, probably in the $90,000 range for Lorenzo Thompson, that is not hit yet. But and Logan Lee is still technically, even though he's on IR right now, he is still in the rule of 51 with his salary cap hit, because that's not he's in the third year of his contract now, and there's no split salary within that. So he is on IR with a with still the same cap hit that he was before he went to IR there. But there are 2 additional players on top of him that total a little over $1 million still on IR that don't technically count against the rule of 51. They will count against the salary cap once the rule of 51 is removed, assuming both those players on IR, and that looks like that's going to be the case at least to start the season there. And then obviously you still have the 52nd and 53rd player to account for. You still have a full practice squad of over $4 million to account for. When it comes to that, this team is going to want $5 to $7 million in free salary cap space at the start of the regular season for in-season injuries, in-season signings, elevations, and all that kind of stuff there. So they've still got some work to do. But I mean, when you talk about $2.9 million in available salary cap space in real time, and you still have the prospects of Joey Porter Jr. Getting a contract extension done and what an increase of his salary cap charge, they still might be able to get Joey Porter Jr. done, signed, sealed, and delivered, and his salary cap increase still fit under that $2.986 million in available salary cap space. However, at some point, this team's going to have to restructure a contract because of the other stuff out there, like the practice squad, 52nd, 53rd player, guys on IR, any maybe additional injury settlements that we have moving forward at this point. But if you want to talk technical at this point in real time, this team is 2.986494 under the cap with a Lorenzo Thompson injury settlement outline.
All right, so Pittsburgh's still in all right shape. As you said, they're likely to restructure, almost guaranteed to restructure DK Metcalf. They're going to release Malik Harrison in 99% certainty. So those 2 moves alone are going to really create a bunch of cap space on their own for the short term.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good deal. Thank you, as always, for being on top of the contract details and setting us straight, our guiding light on anything financially related. That was the big story to talk about, Dave. Where to from here? We're waiting for Mike McCarthy to speak to the media right around as the time we're recording this, so hopefully we'll have some information during the show. I don't know if McCarthy will perfectly outline the quarterback plan this week. It'll be nice if he does, but we'll see what the status is for Will Howard, Drew Aller, Aaron Rodgers. Will he play this week? Mason Rudolph, etc. Just kind of give me your overall thoughts for the second game. We'll talk about it more in depth for the Friday show, but what are you hoping to hear, hoping to see from this game against the Jets?
A lot more of Will Howard and Drew Aller. Surprise, surprise. I think that's first and foremost on top of my head. I am interested. What does, how much do you have to see of Mason Rudolph in this next game? How much do you need to see of Mason Rudolph in really the final 2 preseason games, especially if maybe you had the thoughts of not keeping him for whatever reason and going forward with Will Howard and Drew Aller? If you really wanted to know whether or not Will Howard could be your backup quarterback in 2026, would you not want him to maybe at least, because look, we'll see if DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. don't play in this game on Friday night, it really is hard to imagine Aaron Rodgers playing in the game. I would think at best, you'd probably see Aaron Rodgers in the preseason finale there, and even that probably not going to be that much time, I wouldn't think. If you really had eyes toward Will Howard potentially being your backup to Aaron Rodgers in 2026, wouldn't this be the game that you'd want him coming out of the tunnel? And especially if you're not going to play Aaron Rodgers, wouldn't this be the game that you want Howard coming out of the tunnel and starting and potentially playing the entire first half in?
Well, I think it's good for Howard to start one of these last 2 games. You could argue it's better for him to start the finale because that's a road game, so just starting. Oh, We got some news. We haven't heard that sound in a while.
I don't know what I just sent Morse code in, but Mike McCarthy has reportedly told the media Will Howard will start and Drew Aller also play, but no veteran quarterbacks will play versus the Jets on Friday. I saw what I need to see from Mason last week, McCarthy said, according to Chris Adamski of the Trib Review. That's great news to have. Thank you, Mike McCarthy. That'll give us something to talk about there. So, all right. Perfect timing there. What does it? I got my two fingers up in the air. What does it mean?
He also, well, did you say the quote? I was kind of reading it too. McCarthy said, "I saw what I needed to see from Mason last week," which would be my point, that he played enough last week, got that second series, and had a extended, what was a 15-play drive, I think, almost, which led in a no points, got stopped at the half-yard line, but that was a extended look there at Mason Rudolph, and this is the right call. No need to play Rodgers. I've been against playing Rodgers the whole preseason. He had Rudolph get a lot of action last week. Let's have these young guys play, be in as many scenarios and situations as possible. It's not like either were deer in the headlights. Their first time out, both obviously met the moment and played really good football. And so let's continue to stack and ascend and give them more to do and more to see and more to evaluate. You're not overloading a guy who looks incapable of handling a large volume of snaps and situations. So, that this is, I know it was rumored yesterday, got to give credit. Andrew Filipponi had said this was kind of a scoop, didn't confirm it, but was talking about this would be the plan, that Howard would start and Aller play and the vets would sit. So that's when we first heard about it. And I think this is clearly the right call by Mike McCarthy.
I agree with that. If you're listening to this as a fan, this is, to me, best case scenario right now when it comes to this. This means that they think enough of Will Howard to give him a legitimate shot to me to be the backup to Aaron Rodgers. Now, how he plays in these final two games will go a longer way in obviously determining that. And yeah, I get that preseason vanilla defense, yada yada. But I want to see this guy come out of the tunnel, know that he's starting the game ahead of time against whatever defense he's going to have to play with, and I want to see him build on his performance of the first preseason game. Does this imply at all that this team is legitimately considering Drew Howard?
Drew Howard. You've combined the two into one quarterback. That's how you get three quarterbacks on the roster. You just combine the two.
Is this in any way a sign that this team is seriously considering Will Howard be opening the season as the backup to Aaron Rodgers, and thus potentially Mason Rudolph being jettisoned in some way, shape, or form?
I mean, you could look at it in a couple different ways, of them considering all four quarterbacks and an extended look at that, or Howard as the number two. The bottom line is you're just looking to get as thorough an evaluation on both young quarterbacks, but Howard in particular, because Aller's going to make the team, obviously, to have all the information, all the knowledge at your disposal to make the most informed decision come August 30th's cutdowns. You need as much information, as many reps as humanly possible, with only 3 exhibition games to do it. Rudolph is such a veteran. You know what he can do. You already saw that in the preseason game. They went through one game together under Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, this to me is just a reflection of needing to learn as much as you can about these guys, to have all the information possible so you feel as confident in your decision, whatever that decision may be, come cutdowns.
All right. Does this mean I've seen enough of Mason to think that his roster spot is safe?
No, and to answer your question a little more directly, like, Howard could still be the number 2 quarterback. If he goes out there and plays really well, that is still on the table. Now, I think the other thought is, does this mean Rudolph will not play in the finale against, oh God, who's the finale? Buffalo.
On the road.
It sounds like when McCarthy says, I saw what I need to see for Mason last week, no reason to play him in the finale either, I assume.
Yeah, I guess we'll get to that. A lot could come out in the wash in this next preseason game. Yeah, Yeah, look, long and short of it is I think this is a right decision. Now, once again, Will Howard, as we talked about several weeks ago, he's got these opportunities to earn this job, even in the preseason, are going to be few and far between, and he's got to take advantage of it. If he comes out and has a good game. And here's the other thing. If you look around the NFL, if let's say this team decided to not keep 4 quarterbacks, obvious and Mason was going to be their backup, it leads you to believe that Will Howard would be the odd man out within that. To me, if I'm around the NFL, especially as long as Will Howard does not fall flat on his face in these final 2 preseason games, there's no way he clears waivers to go to the practice and ultimately signs in with the Steelers on the practice squad. So if this team ultimately decides to part ways with Will Howard, and look, in the grand scheme of things, people say, so what? All right. But don't count on Will Howard remaining with the Steelers if he is waived here in a couple more weeks, because I think there's enough need of young quarterbacks with potential, especially guys that, come out of, Ohio State and had, the kind of season that he had there with them. That's enough of a risk for a guy to be claimed off of waivers to be your number 3 quarterback in some of these cities, some of these other teams around the NFL. So I do think that I think this is the right decision to find out exactly what they have in Will Howard more than anything else in these final 2 preseason games, and then make the decision at that point. Now, could they obviously still move forward with keeping 4 quarterbacks? It is indeed very plausible. And heck, you could keep all 4 quarterbacks, and then, if you're out of things, let's say by the trade deadline for whatever reason, you could probably ship Mason Rudolph off to a team that might have an injury or need a better backup quarterback situation for a stretch run. So that's not out of the question as well, too. But I think the biggest thing here, based on this news from McCarthy this morning, is they're going to give Will Howard still a legitimate shot at earning the backup quarterback job.
Sure. And I know we'll talk about it a lot more throughout these next, what is it now, 11 days to cut downs. But what is the argument for cutting Will Howard or not keeping 4 quarterbacks if this team is set on Mason Rudolph being the top backup that isn't just, oh, that's weird, that's unusual to carry 4 quarterbacks? I mean, what is the reason beyond that? It's hard to find one. If you talk about who's your best 53 on the roster, based on how they played so far, I would say that Rudolph, Howard, Aller, Rogers are part of your best 53 on your roster.
Yeah, I think you look at it like, okay, we like the development of Will Howard as part of the McCarthy quarterback school. He played well during the preseason. We like the improvement, but he's not quite there just yet. And we can work around the roster, the 53rd player on the roster, by elevations or what have you. We're not convinced that we can get Will Howard to the practice squad. We would like to set ourselves up for a potential starting quarterback battle next offseason between Will Howard and Drew Aller. So he's done enough that he's worth keeping to set up a potential battle next offseason.
Yeah, just keep your options open. Have all these guys that have potential and guys you want to work with and develop that are clearly showing something to get you excited. For a team without that definitive franchise option, why would you remove options from yourself? That's not doing yourself any service long term. So it just doesn't make sense to remove those options when you're trying to find one of those guys.
What does Will Howard need to do to make Mason Rudolph expendable?
I mean, I think individually, I broke down his tape extensively from his debut. I mean, continue to obviously produce and be clean and all those things, the fundamentals, the baselines of it all. But I thought he got a little frenetic when the first read wasn't there last week, where he had a little tendency to take off or bail on a pocket. That happened on I think it was a second down where he wanted Weegan in the flat, but they bailed out of their blitz look the Packers did and played cover 3. And so Howard took off the one where I think Bernard might have run the wrong route on the right sideline, and Howard ended up rolling to the right and throwing the ball away. Just want to see him be a little better getting to that second, third read in this game. And so, particularly if you want to detail a point that I want him to look at or want to see that, and then just anything vertically down the sideline, haven't seen much of that in training camp or in the preseason game. So I want to just see those 9 routes down the sideline to show that he can make those throws.
All right. If last week's game wasn't big enough for Will Howard, this one is a Super Bowl, it feels like right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're all critical
Yeah.
for a guy that needs these reps and is obviously in a situation where he's being evaluated and his roster spot could go a lot of different ways and his future is not certain. So yeah, these are always huge reps.
All right. All right. Interesting development there, and a timely one at that.
All right, Dave, we were just on the quarterback topic. So
Yeah.
yeah, that timing could not have been any better. So thank you for McCarthy saying that and Chris Adamski for tweeting that out. What other non-quarterback things are you looking for in this second time around the train?
Yeah, I'd like to save a lot of that potentially for the Friday show as we get closer to maybe who's in and who's out. But
Just tell me one player that you really you have a keen eye on for the second game.
Look, I'll say the offensive line in general. I'd like to see the starting offensive line have a better performance, and they better if Drew Howard wants any have.
He said Drew Howard again.
Will Howard to have. I'm looking at all these things on my Twitter line right now. If Will Howard to have a chance of having a successful night, I'd like to see that offensive line play at least 2 series, maybe 3, and obviously have a better showing overall because we don't think Max Ianichur is going to play in this game. Troy Fautano had a bumpy ride the last game. So did Dylan Cook over there at right tackle as well too. There, so I think offensive line in general, the starting unit is something that's going to have my attention until they're out of the game in this one. Outside of that, not expecting obviously Pittman and DK Metcalf to potentially play in this. You want to see Roman Wilson get a few more opportunities, what he can do with it. I'd like to see Bernard continue pick up where he left off last week in that opener on the offensive side of football there. Deeper down, obviously, your draft picks Dunker and Weegan on the offensive side of football. How much burn will Caleb Johnson get? Will he get any more than he got in the opener there? And then when you flip over to the defensive side of football, Gabriel Rubio, I think he's got a legitimate chance to follow up a good showing in that opener to maybe make another step forward to securing a spot on the 53-man roster this game against the Jets. Who's going to be out there in the secondary? Will we see Brisker at all? Will we see Deshaun Elliott at all in the second preseason game? But I think it's mostly the youngsters overall, the draft picks and the starting offensive line and the 2 quarterbacks, and then throw in Caleb Johnson as far as usage, even though I don't. Even if Caleb Johnson were to start and play the entire first half, I don't think that means anything right now for him. I would like to see him play a lot on special teams. As I said a couple of days ago, if I'm Caleb Johnson, I'm going to everybody in that building saying, play me as much as possible.
I know Mike McCarthy apparently was just asked about why Caleb Johnson did not play much in that opener, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I'm just trying to read. Says they wanted to establish the run, focus on young players. I mean, he would qualify for both of those things, so I'm not entirely sure what that answer is supposed to mean there. But yeah, a guy that's going to have to get some burn. I wonder if they're going to use him more in that third game, potentially as a little bit of a showcase for teams to inquire about trading for him, because it feels like his days in Pittsburgh are numbered. Assistant GM Andy Weidl's also speaking to the media, Dave, and we're just getting some of those quotes in now. On the very popular subject of keeping 4 quarterbacks potentially, Weidl apparently saying this also comes from Chris Adamski, quote, "That will play itself out. That will be up to Coach McCarthy," really affirming that McCarthy has control over the 53-man roster, which has been expected. So still to use the Mike Tomlin phrase, squirreling those nuts when it comes to how many quarterbacks a team will keep.
All right.
For me, yeah, I echo all of your thoughts in terms of what I'm looking for. And like you said, we'll talk about it more in depth for the Friday show. So we have something there to discuss. But I want to look at Dalen Everett too. I think it's been a good summer for him. Maybe I haven't quite felt some of the giant praise of this is the best rookie in camp. And maybe I'm just missing something on that. So I want to see a little more of that. And I want to see him his second time out. It sounds like, I think it was Danny Crossman talking, maybe it was him or Graham, that Everett maybe got a little winded at the end of the game for the volume of snaps, special teams, and defense, which is natural. First football game he played in a while and playing a lot and running some of those vertical routes and really kind of testing your stamina. So just want to get a closer and better look at Everett second time through.
All right, and just in general as a team, can't have 11 penalties for 140 something yards. You got to obviously clean that up. So that's another thing to look for just in general there. And like to see the tackling remain as good as it was in that opener.
Mm-hmm.
Just 4 missed tackles in that game. Not a lot of yak involved in that game. I don't think this is a Jets offense that's going to roll out. Who's a running back over there that's banged up right now?
Breece Hall.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's going to play in this game as well too. So they probably won't have to defend against that. But I think we hit on the major things that we'll be looking for, and we'll go a little bit deeper into this on the Friday morning show.
All right, sounds good. To go back to the quarterbacks, because it's a quarterback world and we're all living in it, I have my training camp grades of the 4 quarterbacks up on the site. I'll just read off the letter grades. You guys can read the article. I go through all the details. This is just camp in a vacuum based on their camp and preseason debut or preseason opener performance. Aaron Rodgers, A- to Aller, B+, Mason Rudolph, B+, and Will Howard, B. So that's the order in which I'm putting the 4. You can go through the whole commentary. Too much to really. I'm not going to read every word that I wrote here, but those are the grades.
Did you get biased at all in writing this up, having seen the first preseason game?
Well, that's part of the evaluation. I know it's called training camp grades, but I write that I also been, because you can't. It'd be impossible to separate the preseason performance and somehow try to remove that from your mind and say that it's only based off of how training camp, the practices actually look. So I just put the preseason in there because I think it's impossible to separate and be biased otherwise. So yeah, the preseason game is obviously a big part of that evaluation where the quarterbacks obviously shine. But I did give the edge to Aller over Howard for those asking the question.
All right, and that's quite the write-up. I don't know how many words are in that, but you went real deep in this as far. And look, I think the giant takeaway is the quarterbacks have done well for training camp and through the first preseason game.
Yeah, no matter if you want to fight me on, is it B+ or B? Are they the same grade? Like, I don't really care about that. They both played well. They both showed their positive traits. They both, I think, ascended from where they were at camp to where they're at now, which is what I've talked about, the arc of camp in the summer, not just day to day, how do they play in this practice or perform in this moment, but just the overall totality of it. They're both on the upswing, and that's what you're looking for.
All right, good write up there. And I imagine you're going to be going through the other positions here with some grades moving forward here, right?
Yep, as I always do, I'll go through every single player on the roster, position group by position group, and hopefully get it done around cut downs. All right, Dave, that really hits the bulk of things, as Jerry Dulac mentioned in his chat. Although he's not going to guarantee anything, he does not expect the team to trade Mason Rudolph or Broderick Jones, 2 potential trade pieces that you could look at and say maybe they'll have some value on the market. But Dulac believes, although again not guaranteeing, that either guy will be traded.
All right, when it comes to Broderick Jones, we didn't hit on this. He played obviously a lot of snaps in that preseason opener, all at left tackle. Do you want to see him play some right tackle potentially? And look, you're dealing with really the same numbers, right? Because this team hasn't. I suppose they might have Stephen Jones back healthy this week, right?
He never got all the way full from that last practice that we saw, the Sunday practice. He was working his way back, doing some of the 2-spot walkthrough stuff. But yes, to your point, if you could get Stephen Jones back, or let's say Doug Nestor can now kick out and play tackle, that's going to give you a little more flexibility within the group. So you could also just flip Jack Driscoll and Broderick Jones. I mean, Driscoll can play left tackle. They're both swing-capable guys, experience on the left and right side. So, yeah, I think assuming here's my question, though. Is Jones, could he still push for a starting job with Iheanacho set to miss his second game and Dylan Cook maybe not having an outstanding summer? Is Jones, Broderick just in the backup bucket, or is there a world in which he could push for a starting role?
Well, that's why I asked the question. You're not going to question my question.
I'm going to get ahead of you on this.
No, I'm not going to let you question my question. I'm going to question your question of my question. How important is it to see him at right tackle in these final 2 preseason games? If he doesn't play any right tackle, does that mean that you saw enough of it back when he was, the season that he played, right, the time he spent at right tackle, that you'd want to see some cohesion, you would think, on that right side of the line if he was going to have a legitimate start opportunity to be your week 1 right tackle. If that was the case, then I don't want my starting right tackle spending all the preseason playing left tackle.
Right. I mean, he's played a good amount of right tackle in practice, so it's not like he's been working just on the left side this summer. But to your point, getting those snaps in game are good. And I think McCarthy's whole premise for the offensive line has been play as many guys in as many different combinations as possible, because you never know when injuries are going to totally reshape how the offensive line looks, and you don't want 2 guys to be brand new working next to each other in a offensive line position where you have to work in tandem. It's not just you do your job and you do your job, and that's fine. It's all about working in conjunction, whether you're doing combination blocks or stunt pickup or just anything in communication. So to your point, I think regardless of whether the thought is, could Broderick Jones compete for the right tackle job or just be a quality swing tackle, you want to get him right tackle snaps in a game for this new coaching staff to see and evaluate all the same. So yeah, I would like to see that.
All right, if Broderick Jones logged 0 snaps at right tackle in this second preseason game, is that enough to come out with the declaration that he's probably not going to be the week 1 right tackle?
Starting right tackle, yeah, I would say it starts to indicate that. Sure.
All right, who is left tackle capable legitimately for this second preseason game? You got Fautanu.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously got Broderick Jones. Driscoll has played left tackle before in his career. You would think that would be an option.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Dylan Cook obviously has logged time at left tackle, so that's 4. Is there who else is a legitimate, even late final 2 drives of the game that legitimately could play left tackle in the second preseason game?
Doug Nestor, so long as there's interior help to get him the chance to kick out and play left tackle. He's gotten left tackle and right tackle reps in camp.
Okay. And wouldn't you probably like to see a few more snaps of Dylan Cook at left tackle if Broderick's going to play on the right side some in this game?
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, Cook's played some left tackle in camp too. They've moved these guys. That's why I really stopped talking about, like, oh my goodness, this guy's getting first team reps now, or this guy's getting second team reps, because they've mixed and matched so much in camp. It's really less about anything newsworthy, and they're just trying to work through different combinations of guys. So yeah, I mean, I think either way, to kind of go back to the initial question, Broderick Jones probably not going to start a right tackle no matter what, just as he still kind of works back to get his strength and just kind of be ready. I think they're going to envision him in a swing role. The question will be, could he have some trade value in a world where Iheanacho gets back healthy? Let's say he's back for the finale and plays well, and Cook's your starting right tackle. You feel like you got 3 tackles there. Could you flip Jones for a 4th-round pick? I think that's possible, just given the value that offensive linemen have. So that's a conversation to bring up. But obviously, there's still good reason for Pittsburgh to want to hold on to their depth and insulate themselves as much as possible against injury. So we'll see. But I think certainly if he makes the team, Broderick Jones would have that swing tackle type of role.
All right, and assuming Max Iheanacho is not healthy enough to play Friday night against the Jets, and that indeed winds up happening, he's got to be out of the running to be the week 1 starting right tackle, right?
It seems really unlikely. I know I mentioned with Fautanu when he got hurt, his rookie year, the Pittsburgh still thought of him so highly that he was still in that right tackle mix to jump right back in whenever he got healthy. But I think those guys a little bit different coming out in terms of their, how much of a veteran Fartanu was, and Ihanacho, even though he had a couple of good practices, it was just 2 or 3 practices we're talking about, and still a more raw body of work overall. So yeah, it'd be awfully tough for Ihanacho. We talked about this before camp that McCarthy typically goes with a veteran over the rookie, and he had the injury on top of that. Now, if Ihanacho was healthy this whole time and just crushing it the way that he flashed in training camp, then it's a different conversation. But the missed time, just given that and the natural veteran edge that those guys seem to have, it's going to be Cook, I think.
All right. Brock Hoffman, second center in this game against the Jets.
We'll see. I mean, they obviously gave him a series at center in that opener, and he's played more center the later you got into training camp. But I still think McCollum will come in and play second team center to relieve Zach Frazier first. I think Hoffman will play guard initially.
Okay. Does that mean anything towards McCollum's chances of making a roster if he isn't the second center in this game?
Well, again, I think it's less about who's second and third, but just how many snaps at center does Hoffman get? Does he get another series? Does he get more? If you have more guard help in terms of Stephen Jones being healthy, that could maybe give Hoffman more chances at center. So I just want to see how many snaps he gets there. How much is he working there? A little bit, a lot, none at all. That'll kind of tell us maybe who's going to be that backup center or who's in the running for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Hoffman's getting 0 snaps at center in this game, maybe that tells you that McCollum's the backup center. If he's getting 3 drives, that tells you that they certainly feel like Hoffman can be that guy. And I know that he played a ton of center in Dallas, and McCarthy's familiar with what he can do at that position. But I'm curious about the snap count more so than who's second and who's third.
All right. We'll have that tracked by the great Tom Mead on the offensive side of football through this game. All right. What else do we have?
I think that's all that I have. Weidl's still speaking, but to my knowledge, nothing crazy that he said. We'll certainly be recapping and sharing anything big that the assistant general manager says. Why do you think Weidl has not gotten looks for GM jobs in these last couple of cycles, despite Pittsburgh generally having success in terms of the regular season play, at least? And I think having a reputation these last couple of years of some really quality draft classes.
I don't have a good answer for that. I would have thought, especially with kind of what's transpired with Atlanta and Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
He did get an interview in Atlanta, but obviously was not a finalist. But even in January, there really wasn't a lot of. He didn't get a single interview. I don't believe that. Maybe he's turning them down behind the scenes as a Pittsburgh native. But I imagine assistant GMs would like to become full GMs someday, the lead guy. And Weidl's really well respected and has a ton of great connections through Ozzie Newsome and just his whole upbringing, Howie Roseman in Philadelphia. I've always been a little confused of what the issue is there.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good question to ask. I just don't have a great answer for it.
But I'm sure Pittsburgh is happy to have him as long as possible. All right, Dave, anything else? Let us know. If not, we can get to some reader/listener emails next.
Yeah, Alex, let's roll into the email machine here. We did not get to any the other day, so we'll try to make up for a couple of them in the end of this show. Todd Gensler, this one just popped in the box. What will Aller and or Howard need to do to convince the Steelers that they don't need to draft a quarterback in the first round next year? Their only shot is this preseason after the regular season starts. Unless something goes drastically wrong, we won't see any of them. He says, also, I've heard a lot of comments about this year's training camp schedule. Pittsburgh Steelers training camp is a very popular thing. People travel from all over the world to watch them, and it really seems like there were so many practices that were either cut short or canceled altogether. He says, I know McCarthy is only interested in the health of this team, which totally makes sense, but when people are spending as much money and time as they are to watch the Steelers practice and play during training camp, either because they can't afford to afford going to a game or their schedule does not permit, it should mean something. Will this be something McCarthy and the Steelers organization should consider moving forward? He says, I realize it's not about the fans, but about building championship team, but fans are what make this go. Blah. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I get the general feel of this email from Todd. Todd, look, training camp's great. It's great that the Steelers go away. It's great that you got a setting like St. Vincent College in Latrobe. You from the Friday/Saturday night practice and all like that. But that it just happens to be a byproduct of fans getting to see that kind of stuff there. This team should not tailor their training camp when it, for the fans to have a better overall experience. It's just a byproduct that the fans get to have the kind of access that they have. So I get it that people need to take that into consideration moving forward. Now that we've seen at least the first training camp from Mike McCarthy. Will Mike McCarthy's training camp change moving forward? We'll have to see, but you don't you don't tailor your training camp around giving fans what they probably want to see, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I empathize because it's not fun for me either to not have some of these things to write or report about or some of these days washed out. The weather is obviously uncontrollable, and it was an especially rainy August after the first week or so of training camp. And so the team itself was disrupted. They didn't get to practice that last day, which was not their plan or intent. So no one got to work or do the things they wanted to do that day. I get it though. It sucks. I mean, that Saturday practice that was 45 minutes, just a walkthrough with the fans packing the bleachers. I think a lot of people were just frankly confused and didn't know that practice was over and what the heck was going on because it was so short and so uneventful. So yeah, I feel for all those people. It really sucks, but I don't know what the alternative or the fix really is. To be honest with you, as you said, and the reader acknowledged, it's about the players and serving them first. Training camp is free across the board in terms of parking and tickets. I know there's certainly a cost to people that travel and gas and hotels and stuff like that, but just from a entering training camp standpoint, you can go to training camp and not spend $1 on the camp experience itself. So maybe it's different if tickets were $50 a pop or something like that. So yeah, it sucks. I don't know if there's an answer. McCarthy's already talked about making changes for camp next year. I don't know if that's going to really change our viewing experience, but we'll have to see.
All right, as far as this first part here, what will Aller and or Howard need to do to convince the Steelers that they don't need to draft a quarterback in the first round next year? Well, ideally, you're not going to see much of either or in 2026 outside of maybe mopping up at the end of some blowouts and that sort of thing. So it's not like you should expect to learn a lot during the season. I mean, the preseason, however much weight this team wants to put on that when it comes to Howard and Aller is one thing, and they've got to feel obviously comfortable, but you don't know how the draft's going to play out either. As we've said, the quarterback class might look one way heading into the college football season, and it might exit looking totally different. You don't know where you're going to pick. I think you have to leave open the option of maybe a quarterback in the first round next year. And, you're probably not going to learn a lot about Aller or Howard in 2026, though, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy overall there. So I think you're going to learn as much as you can about these kids starting on Friday night, and obviously in the preseason finale against the Bills. And other than that, you're going to have to take what you learned during training camp and the preseason and then start applying it once you get an idea of what the quarterback class is going to look like come draft day in 2027. And really that's the best option that I have. Now, look, if Aller and or Howard get to play in 2026 a considerable amount, that would go a long way in helping to evaluate the future of both those guys. But I don't think you can obviously bank on that happening.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of this is out of their control, and they're not deciding and dictating who Pittsburgh does and does not draft. All they can do is handle what they can control, which means passing these upcoming tests of the preseason games and looking good in practice and doing the work behind the scenes and showing their development where we might not be able to see it, but the team can. And then, frankly, some of it will come down to what does the texture next year's class look like? Is it a really strong class? Is Pittsburgh in position to get some of these guys, and how easily could that be? So that obviously has an influence on draft plans as well. But all they can do is all they can do, which means passing these tests and showing their improvement and development and looking like guys that are worth longer looks of in 2027 that would compel Pittsburgh to pass on a quarterback.
All right, Jason Chadwell's got a short and sweet one in here. Eval gone wrong. Thanks for all the great training camp coverage. I was high on the Caleb Johnson pick at the time. Where do you guys think the eval went wrong? Well, for starters, we just haven't seen a lot of Caleb Johnson, and particularly last season after the early season fumble against the Seahawks. Obviously, I think first and foremost, what they did see versus Mike Tomlin versus after seeing what they saw last year in I guess practices and a little bit during the season. Uh, it started with this team obviously going out getting Rico Dowdle, a guy that Mike McCarthy has a lot of comfortability in. Jalen Warren obviously going to be part of this situation as well too. So it's hard. And look, Caleb just hasn't given himself much help as far as the special teams asset goes. There, I imagine, uh, how he practices and kind of things that they've seen transpire since last season have played a role in this, but it's hard to exactly say what went wrong in the evaluation with Caleb Johnson when we just haven't seen him play. And look, you can roll back to last week's preseason game as well too. Just a handful of carries, like three 5 offensive snaps, 3 on special teams. That's not a lot to make an evaluation on from an outsider, especially when you add on what little he played as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, I think did he say Kenny Pickett too? I maybe missed part
No,
of the
he just said
question.
he just
He
said
said
Caleb.
I don't know
Yeah.
why I don't know why maybe it just goes to Kenny Pickett in my head right now. But with with Caleb Johnson, I mean, it was drafted for an outside zone heavy system of multiple tight ends and the Arthur Smith scheme, and I think that's a big reason that led Pittsburgh to Caleb Johnson. But then, additionally, what was the value outside of being a runner? And when you're playing with Aaron Rodgers and such a veteran, detail-oriented quarterback, you better be good in pass pro to keep Rodgers healthy and upright. You better be able to be a pass catching option for him, which is why Rodgers is such a big fan of Jalen Warren and what Kenneth Gainwell did last year for how quick the ball was getting out and how often they caught 100 plus passes when you combine those two guys, and Johnson just was not there. And so when you don't have that additional value beyond being a runner, it really limits what you can do when you're a backup. So I think just drafted for a different OC and different scheme and system, and didn't have that versatility to really earn the trust and playing time alongside Aaron Rodgers.
All right, Mark Miller's in here back in the email. Says Aaron air yards in practice, but he starts the email saying yes on the Benton contract. He showed enough last season to make it worth the risk versus reward to get it done. And he sent this 4 hours ago, so he probably sent that before the details released this morning of the Keanu Benton contract. I would imagine Mark is even more on board with the Benton contract now that the details have been released here. He says, he goes on to say, I agree with Alex. Was very impressed with Weejan's decision making on special teams. I thought the fair catch at the 15-yard line where he ran 25 or so yards to his right to get there was more impressive than his big catch and run. Likely prevented the ball from being down inside the 5. My question is, seemed like last year Aaron checked the ball down a lot, getting it out really quick. I'm not sure if that was an Aaron thing or an Aaron Smith or an Arthur Smith thing. In the first preseason game, all 3 quarterbacks seemed to hold it longer and push the ball down the field more. Have you seen Aaron do this in practice too? He says, I believe this team has a chance to be special. New philosophy on both sides should rejuvenate the veterans, and if successful early, could make for a fun year. All right, let's go to the crux of that. Let's see, have you seen Aaron push the football down the field in training camp practices and hold on to the football longer?
I'm obviously not calculating snap to throw times, and his quick release is certainly still on display. And I say that in terms of him, just his mechanics, not in terms of he's getting the ball out because he's scared to hold the football. It's not a critique; it's a positive of just this catch and release against the blitz, or when there's an open receiver, the ball just jumps out of his hand. Unlike any quarterback ever watched, it's like him and Marino with the two fastest releases. I mean, has he pushed the ball down the field? Yes, he's thrown deep balls to DK, to Roman, to he's thrown down the seam to Pat Fryermuth. He's had a couple of extended moments, so it's hard to really tell. Like he looks like the same guy as last year in terms of just the physical talent and the makeup and the play style. So we'll see if the McCarthy system changes that at all. That's going to be the truer test in game action. I mean, you imagine when you add Michael Pittman Jr. and Bernard and Roman Wilson, just getting more weapons that the running backs won't catch 100 plus passes like last year, which will lend itself to a longer snap to throw time. It's still going to be one of the quickest in the NFL, no question about that. Just can it be a little bit, not the 2.2 seconds that it was last year. So all that to say, probably will be a little bit of an improvement, quote unquote, but still going to probably be a quick release time for Aaron Rodgers.
Here's the biggest thing when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. These stats from Next Gen Stats last year. Aaron Rodgers' average completed air yard distance was 3.4 yards. His average intended air yards distance was 6. The year prior to that with the Jets, 4.5 was his average completed air yard distance. His average intended air yard distance was 6.7 yards. Obviously, the year before that was the injury, but his final year in Green Bay was 4.9 yards completed air yard distance and 8 yards intended air yard distance, and then the year prior to that 4.9 and 7.6. We've got to see these completed air yard distances and intended air yard distances go up, especially
No question.
over what we saw last year.
Yeah, no question. That's going to be the litmus test, the number that we'll be watching like hawks this year.
Right. And you would think in order for those two numbers to increase, his average time to throw is going to have to increase as well, too, right?
Generally speaking, yes. I mean, there are some ways where that isn't always the case against some of these pressure looks where the ball just is getting out fast to open receivers, hot receivers. But yeah, I mean, there's a correlation there. And again, if your running backs aren't catching 100 plus balls, if your number two receivers catching more passes, if your receivers as a unit are catching more passes, that would suggest the ball's getting pushed downfield a little more. You're holding onto the ball a little bit longer.
Yeah, the biggest look. It's a broken record, and it's kind of obvious as well too. How this offense goes, your ability to have explosive plays is going to, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the key to all this, and we're going to get a sense of it through the first 4 games of the season. To see if this is a team that could be able to push the football down the field a little bit more.
It was 114 receptions from your running backs last year. I just looked up to get the exact number. 73 for Gainwell to lead the team, 40 on the button for Warren, and 1 from Caleb Johnson. And so I imagine you're not going to have 114 this year. And so the ball distribution just will look different. That should naturally lend itself to some of those numbers increasing.
All right, let's take one more from Brett Nile here. David Knox, first off, to answer the question from the podcast, yes, I would have been fine with that number for Benton, but my thought was always a contract similar to Larry Ogunjobi, so I'm actually fine with the current contract. He wrote this 10 hours ago, so I imagine he feels even more on board with the Benton contract now that the numbers have been released. He says Day had an interception of the contract structures for Dave, but he wrote Day. Dave had an interpretation of the contract structures for Benton and Herbig, said it was partially about cash flow and guaranteed money, and I think those were important, but I think there's another interpretation to the structure. I think the structure says they think Herbig and Benton are the eventual replacements for Watt and Heyward, essentially the meat of the contract and cash kicking in when Watt or Highsmith and Heyward have likely moved on. Look, I think just in general here, I think this is about getting good deals done with two young players that, could potentially become starters once Watt or Watt and or Heyward move on, either after this next season or 2 years down the road. But make no mistake about it, though, is essentially you've got 2 years with Herbig and Benton for them to show that those guys can indeed be the starters, every down players for this team. And really, as we mentioned, we're going to have to see both those guys on the field more, especially when it comes to Herbig starting this season, because you don't pay a guy that kind of money to log 400 snaps and another 200 on special teams, right? And then, Benton, even though you've got what we said, $14 million in cash only tied up in 2026, that's enough to warrant getting him on the field as much as possible here. So I think just overall, you just got to look at these as wins for the Steelers just from a cash flow guaranteed money situation here. Neither guy received fully guaranteed money past 2026. Both are very cuttable after the 2027 season. And what if, you could, depending on how those Herbig and Benton play, and depending on if Heyward and Watt each play, and Highsmith for that matter, play one more, in other words, the 2027 season, you could still come out of that 2027 season wondering who one of your starting outside linebackers is, and whether or not you need another defensive tackle.
I know it's always easier to find these answers. Hindsight, of course, is 2020. I had this thought the other day. Is the fact that Cam Heyward got his extension, his new contract situation handled way back in February, was that a sign this team planned to do this blitz of contracts throughout the offseason because they didn't want Heyward to hang on and feel like Pittsburgh was addressing every other contract instead of his, and Heyward just feels some sort of way about that because in past years during his hold-ins, Pittsburgh just was not handing out contracts as frequently as they are right now. Is that sort of a sign that's like, let's get Heyward done, get him paid, so he's not banging down our door of like, why are you paying all these other guys and Benton and Washington and not paying me? Was that sort of a little, I don't know, what do they call it, canary in the coal mine of like, they're going to be pretty active and aggressive re-signing their guys?
I don't think so globally. No, I think, look, Heyward had a great season. I know the sacks and all weren't there, but this is a guy that continues to kick Father Time's ass, and he got $2 million more in 2026 as a result of that. And plus, I think you wanted avoided all the possible repeat of the training camp that you saw last year, where he, for lack of a better word, didn't do much of anything, right? So, and then he had to answer all the questions about why. I think you just wanted to nip that in the bud. And by giving him $2 million more this offseason for 2026, in addition to go ahead and getting an extra non-guaranteed year tacked on, just made him an afterthought early in the offseason there. I don't think it changed their opinion of what they wanted to do this offseason.
Sure. They were going to get something done, but they got it done earlier. They were going to get it done no matter what, but they wanted to get it done earlier so they didn't have this like weird thing of Heyward wondering why they were paying every other guy on the roster instead of him. Like, they didn't pay him until the last possible second last year, despite having a great 2024 season, maybe even a better or just as good 2024 year. So why did they pay him so much sooner this year in 26?
Like I said, get it done and behind them to nip that in the bud, where that wasn't going to be to eliminate the situation with him running through the offseason of wondering about his deal.
Right, but I think that was heightened by the fact that they knew they were going to pay all these other guys too, and that in Heyward's feelings would have been even more heightened watching every other guy get his contract situation taken care of before him.
Right, but when it comes to Benton specifically, technically this was done after training camp ended too, so he wouldn't have been looking over his shoulder saying, "Well, you got Benton done early in training camp. Why
But
not
Heyward
me?"
wasn't paid until like right before, like days before the season last year. So
Right,
had the timeline played out, he would have still been waiting for the contract as they paid Benton.
right, but what I'm saying is you just wanted to avoid all that this year. Their plan all along obviously was to get as many of these guys done. But and look, it only at a charge of $2 million extra on the books early in the offseason to avoid all this, why wouldn't you get it done early?
Sure, but we agree that Hayward's contract status matters because the way they set the Benton deal up, as you always mentioned, the hierarchy,
Right.
Benton's average yearly value, despite the cash flow being different, matched Hayward. That is intentional. That is a direct reflection
Sure.
of Hayward. And so Pittsburgh clearly has their contracts based off of something about Hayward and his status and how Hayward's going to feel about these things. And I don't know. I think obviously, yes, they wanted to avoid a repeat of dragging this thing out in the summer. It was a mess. It was dumb. Hayward had bad PR for it. No reason to drag this thing out that was going to get done again. But they got it done so soon just to get it done out of the way. So Hayward just felt good about his contract situation. And so Pittsburgh could freely pay these other guys aggressively starting in the spring without Hayward wondering, when am I going to get paid?
Look, all this is planned out even more than we can even fathom it is. We
Sure.
we look on the outside, and even as much as I know about contracts and the salary cap, and thinking that I know how something's the front office or of any team, let alone the Steelers, are going to do anything. All this stuff is put into that general plan back at before the start of the new league year, and cash and all like that too. It's not an accident kind of thing, now, things might not happen perfect on the timing of things, i.e., the Joey Porter Jr. thing, and it taken maybe as long to get Benton done. But there is a general rhyme and reason to all of it. It's just not willy nilly flipping offers back and forth between agents and that kind of stuff. There is a master plan that goes a lot deeper than what we even probably could or think that there might be. So is any of this in totality, specifically when it comes to Heyward early in the offseason and the Pat Fryermuth restructure earlier in the offseason, is all, is it happenstance or luck? No, this goes planned out even more than what we think that it might be.
Sure, and you're 100% right about that. Last thought, sort of in that similar vein, just contract related. Some are saying, why is Porter seemingly last to get paid? Why not do Porter first? The market's potentially going up, Witherspoon getting paid, Gonzalez in line for a new deal. Why are they waiting so long for Porter? What would be your response to that?
It takes two to tango, right? And you do have the whole market value thing going on with Witherspoon and potentially Gonzalez here next and all. It's going. Not that it'll be an easier question to answer after they potentially get Joey Porter Jr. done, but let's, once again, and look, people, I think we just saw this, and I noted this the other day with both the Benton and the Herbig contracts. Now, the average yearly value with both those guys looks high on paper, but the devil in the details when it comes to the first year cash flow and the guaranteed money makes both those deals look a lot different comparative to maybe some peers out there. I can see now potentially Joey Porter Jr. having a new money average of 30 million or more, but yet the cash flow in the first 2 years maybe not equaling up, to guys like Witherspoon and Gonzalez, and especially when the guaranteed. But I mean, you are talking about a near, a contract with Joey Porter that could potentially be top 5 at his position. And sometimes those things aren't as easily done as you would think that they could be.
I agree. I think the train of thought of why is Porter waiting so long just doesn't really comport. This is not PEMDAS. PEMDAS, the order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This is not, okay, you do Porter first, and then you do Benton next, and then you do Hurt. Like, it doesn't always work out that way, based on...
I don't know what Sally has to do with this, but okay.
You remember that from math
No.
class? No?
No.
What is PEMDAS? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction? No? The order of, operations in a
And
math problem?
I was a great student at math coming out of grade school with multiplication tables and addition and subtraction all, but once they started putting letters and Sally in there, I was too busy smoking weed and chasing skirt.
You were focused on chasing actual Sallies, not
Yeah,
math Sally.
yeah.
Anyway, the point is, it's
I
not
never heard
okay.
that before.
No, look it up.
No.
Maybe that's before your time. Now it's all Common Core weird stuff.
I
But
mean, after my time.
yeah. Well, before, after
I
you weren't
can,
around.
I
You weren't
can,
around for the time.
I can figure the shit out of a salary cap though.
Yeah, there's no Sallys in that. But point is, it's not okay. You got to do Benton first, or Porter first, and then Benton next. It doesn't always work out that way, just based on negotiations and how close you are to deals. And you don't want to let Porter hold up everything else, because what if you don't get Porter done until September 10th, and then you get 3 days to do all the other contracts? No, it's just it doesn't always work that way. Yes, you want to try to pay guys early so the market doesn't go up. Agents recognize that too. Last year I was critical of Pittsburgh for waiting on Watt because there weren't other contracts to do, and B, they were going to pay Watt. That was just like a foregone conclusion. It's just a question of when that deal was going to get done. Porter is not quite at that 100%. We still feel like it's going to get done, but there's a lot more business to attend to this year, and Porter's not quite in that Watt category. So I think that critique is different than what the critique was last year. So yeah, I just don't find that thought to be too salient.
Look, we can all speculate as to what might be taking so long within this. We can speculate Joey Porter Sr. Maybe playing a role in this. We can speculate till the cows come home, but we just don't know what the real reason or plan might have been all along here. And look, maybe they want, obviously he's on PUP and he's not doing anything at this point. So you're not going to see him during the preseason more than likely. I mean, even if they got a deal done today, how likely, he's not going to play in the preseason game against the Jets. What's the likelihood of him not doing anything up until this point? Let's say he signs the deal tonight. What is the likelihood of him even playing in the preseason finale at that point? You want to get him to the regular season, obviously healthy. Yeah, you'd like to see him in there with Dean and the rest of the guys, but at what cost, especially that he hasn't done anything at this point? Let's revisit this discussion after the contract is signed, and we get a look at the structure and maybe can compare and contrast it to potentially Witherspoon and Gonzalez, and then maybe further speculate about maybe why it took so long at that point.
All right. Good deal. Yeah, let's see how this thing comes out in the wash, as you said, and evaluate it from there.
Once again, I go back to saying, as much as we think, and look, if anybody feels a right to speculate on maybe contracts and structure and all, it would be me, especially when it comes to Steelers. But as much speculation as I might try to do, it's still just speculation, because not being on the inside or not having any inside kind of reports related to it.
All right, Dave, we got some more, just not news stuff, but just Steelers stuff filtering in, so that we can probably wrap up the show and come back on Friday.
All right. You say there is more news or no?
Well, I mean, there's just, so I'm just going to get to, there's a thing from Awful Announcing or Andrew Marchand about Mike Tomlin's contract, just some stuff that we need to probably start writing about.
All right, we'll do it. We'll be back on Friday as well to further preview the preseason game against the New York Jets on Friday night. We'll see if anything else notable happens between there. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any transactions between now and Friday night. There was no visitors in on Tuesday. So it looks like the roster that they have right now is the roster that they're going to play the Jets with there. So we'll be back to wrap up or preview the rest of the game on Friday morning. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. You can email the show at what is it? TheTerriblePodcast@gmail.com. You can donate to the site by going to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, and you can get an ad-free version by going to the site and clicking the ad-free button. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.